Jerks. Good evening, jerks. It always makes me smile and chuckle a little bit, that little intro video. Thanks for SK27 Music for creating that. It's fun. It's fun to see that. I just chuckle every time. It's funny to see me playing the I never play the drums, by the way. But anyways, we are live with the Young Jerks. We just streamed all day. We were covering Kelsey Fitzsimmons. We were covering Afro Man, and we were also covering the antifreeze murder up there in Salisbury. I got a lot of friends up in Salisbury, so I wanted to cover that one as well. We've been streaming all day, and the Afro Man, the jury just made the decision. Afro Man not guilty of defamation in his civil suit. He walks out of there. He won. He won tonight. He won. The judge did not seem happy. Did you notice that the judge seemed like I think they made a good choice putting it before a jury over the judge because that judge did not seem happy with the results. It was kind of interesting to see that kind of he didn't look happy, but we have a good judge here tonight. And we're going to be talking about Kelsey Fitzsimmons because a lot happened today. A lot happened. The big news of the day for Kelsey Fitzsimmons, it was decided that she's going to go for a bench trial, not a jury trial. Not what attorney Nan Gallagher was suggesting last night. Nan Gallagher thought jury trial, best way to go. I agree with her. The judge does not. The judge that we're going to have on, she thinks a bench trial, it seems like it because she was quoted today in the Mass Live, big newspaper in Massachusetts. She was quoted about this today, about the bench trial for Kelsey Fitzsimmons. Kelsey has decided to put it in the hands of the judge, who is a male, by the way, that's what I'm a little worried about, honestly. But let's see what this judge says, because we've got, again, coming back to the show, friend of the show. Everybody likes her. She's a big child advocate. She's an author as well. The book proceeds of the big book that she's written goes to help adopt children, for the adoption of children. I think it's the Dave Thomas Fund. So we'll be posting all her links up tonight, definitely. Let's bring her up on the show, though. Yeah, Melanie Little thinks the bench trial is the way to go. I'm not so sure. We'll see what happens here. I'm wondering why. Why a bench trial might be better. Maybe it's just simpler. Maybe it's less money. I'm worried. I'm not so convinced. Maybe I'll feel better with this guest that we're going to bring up. Let's bring her up. She's a family law court judge, retired. Carol Erskine. Welcome back to the show, Carol.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Mike. Lot to talk about too, right?
Yes. And Granny just said she just got your book about harmony. That's the one that goes to charity, right? The
Yes,
proceeds.
and thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, all the proceeds go to the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. So they find adoptive homes for children who are hard to adopt. They have disabilities or they're older and been in the system for a long time. So I made a decision with the two dads of Harmony's brother, who are contributors to the book, that we didn't want to profit off of it. So we made that decision to donate all the proceeds to that foundation.
Excellent. And I want to thank our mods. They just posted up your X handle, which is the Carol Erskine. And you can
That's
also
right.
visit your website, the Justice File, which is justicefile.com, to
Yep.
learn more about the books and your causes. And you have a blog there.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope people check that out. We got a pin in the chat today.
Great.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, it's great that you're back again too. You like I said, you were quoted today in Mass Live, the newspaper, about today's news about Kelsey Fitzsimmons.
I
I figure
didn't
we'll
know
just start
that.
right there. What do you
I
think
didn't
about
know
that?
that.
Because
I did not know that. I didn't
yeah,
know
because I just
that.
read it. Yeah,
But that was from my ex quote, which basically I thought that it was a good decision to let a judge decide that. I mean, as I think it can be difficult in a case like this, which has had a lot of publicity. A lot of people in the Essex area know about the case, and there's a lot of noise around the case, and even though you do your best. And when I also, they had 12 voir dire questions for jurors, which also, can make it really difficult. When I viewed the voir dire questions, a lot about, do you feel if a police officer testifies that, they're always believable, things like that are actually pretty common voir dire questions if you're going to have police testimony. And so it's more complicated, and the reason I wrote that was, I said, it takes the emotion out of it, because what the judge has to do is squarely address each and every element under the law, the elements of assault with a dangerous weapon. So you go through each element, and you have a judge, ticking it off. Was there reasonable doubt for this element? In other words, was there a dangerous weapon? Yes, there was a gun. I think the big issue is intent and how a judge is going to view that. So we'll see. It's hard to say anything about the trial because we don't know what evidence they're going to present. But, for those reasons, I think having a judge strictly go through piece by piece the elements, I think that they're comfortable with their decision. I did tons of bench trials, way more bench trials than jury trials in my court, in the juvenile court, because we did a lot of juvenile crime. I just did a lot of bench trials. And so then, of course, then I would become the trier of fact, and I would listen to the evidence and listen carefully to every side of the story. And then I would go through piece by piece, element 1, element 2, element 3. Is it met? Or did the Commonwealth not meet it, and therefore it's not guilty? So I mean, I thought it was a good decision. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. What about the fact that he's a guy? I get worried that a guy might not get all the postpartum depression stuff and have a different
I don't
viewpoint.
know. Judges hear so much. I'm sure he's heard tons of cases, especially in a court where they hear serious crimes. There are many, many times where judges are having people evaluated, for example, at Bridgewater for competency or criminal responsibility, whether or not they could, because of their mental illness, could conform their actions to the tenets of the law. Not that mental illness alone is a reason, but judges hear cases all the time involving people with mental illness. So I don't think that disappears just because this was postpartum depression. And again, I go back to there are elements to assault with a dangerous weapon, and that's what he's going to decide. So it was interesting. I don't know if you picked up on it at the end where the defense lawyer said, Judge, we're going to be asking, even though it's a bench trial, we're going to be asking for some sort of consideration, kind of like a jury instruction on 55 CMR 6.3, which is the Code of Massachusetts Regulations. And on 3, it's, has to do with what a police officer has to do and consider. I think I actually quoted it today. And, the judge, you can see, he already said, what about relevance? And you can see what he's thinking, because what he was saying is this, it's not the police officer who's on trial. So his actions under the CMR, which is the use of force regulations in Massachusetts, a judge may not use of force in a situation where someone is suicidal. I think that's the particular aspect of that reg. And, they're asking for him to consider that. And the judge briefly mentioned relevance, but what he was talking about is, how is that relevant? Because it's not the police officer's actions that I have to decide. It's the actions of the defendant. So I'm not quite sure that the judge, would give that consideration. But I was just surprised when that came up at the end. And then the prosecutor said something like, I just want to put on the record that, the judge and one of the attorneys, I forget who put it on the record, worked in the Suffolk DA's office like
Bradel.
30 years ago, right?
Bradel and the judge work together in the same
That's
office,
not
but
the
different department.
standard at all.
Yeah.
The likelihood is people are going to come into contact or work with each other at some point. The fact that, that they were in the same office, that's not the standard by which, you decide whether someone has to be off. And plus, the prosecutor didn't even file a motion to disqualify based on that. I suspect because he knows it doesn't meet the legal requirements in order to do that. So I'm not really sure. So
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna recuse himself over that one.
he clearly is not going to, nor should he, by the way.
Yeah.
Doesn't meet the requirements to disqualify yourself. So unlike the other judge who, if they hadn't made that decision, where she supposedly was suddenly going to be in another court anyway.
Naaman McCarthy,
Yeah, McCarthy
McCarthy Naaman.
Neiman.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I'm hearing from somebody that is close to someone that was just basically convicted uh, for murder, put in jail, uh, the trial before with this judge. And their big claim, and I haven't looked into it a lot, I gotta say, but their claim is that he let in a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have. That's what this person is trying to get me to look into. But they're telling me like you got to watch out for that judge. That judge is shady. Everyone keeps on saying this judge is looking good. He seems nice. He seems on the ball. The one person that I know that's been watching him for a few weeks at an actual murder trial said, watch out for that judge. That judge is shady. So I think
Well,
that's some
yeah,
interesting feedback. It doesn't mean much because it's anecdotal. It's one person,
right.
but
And not only that, on the
that's what I
basis
worry about.
of what, is someone saying he let in stuff he shouldn't let in? I mean, and first of all, it's the judge's discretion, and if he and secondly, letting in certain evidence doesn't mean that the evidence was so prejudicial that it's reversible error. So, just because people object and as they would always say to me, it's like objection. I would say overruled, and they would say, note my objection for the record. To which I would say, the recording's on. You're on the record. You don't have to say that. But it was always sort of a thing for lawyers to just sort of make it known, like we're going to appeal you on this. But but the truth of the matter is just because you let evidence in, first of all, it's your discretion, and the judge may absolutely understand why it's allowable in. Like some people will say, he let hearsay in. Well, some types of hearsay are admissible. And so you have to understand what the exceptions are to the hearsay rule. So you can't just say, oh, he let hearsay in and that's not right. Well, it might be right because there are certain types of hearsay that are allowable. So I just sort of chuckle when people say, oh, watch out for this judge. This judge allows a lot of people
Do you,
in.
do you, do you do you think though that there are some judges that favor law enforcement over others though? That was kind of the tone I was getting from this person that this judge every time favored the law enforcement, the DA over the defendant throughout the trial. Is that's basically the point that they were trying to make to me. And do you think that that exists? That sometimes there are judges that are like that are more law enforcement fit, bias.
I don't know, really. Can't really answer it except to say that when judges get on the bench, they usually come from a background of either being on the defense side or on the prosecution side. And, you sort of have to be careful, when you're on the bench, to remember that you're in a completely different position and that you have to listen to everybody. You have to listen to the prosecutor, you have to make decisions about evidence, and sometimes very quickly. I mean, I think some judges, are are maybe more precise on the evidentiary rules than others who might be a little more lax for whatever reason. I mean, it boils down to judicial discretion. I don't really have much to say about this particular judge because I don't really know
Right.
much about him. So it's really hard to say, because all I can say is I listened to the evidence and then I made a decision. I looked at what everybody said. I always sort of, it's interesting, listening to people about about jury trials. I always recall having this one jury trial. It was a sexual assault case, and it was a juvenile, and of course, it involved a juvenile victim. And we went through the trial. I did the jury instructions, and the jury came back and they found him not delinquent, as they say in the juvenile court. So it was a not guilty. And as I did sometimes, and as that they encouraged us to do, to go talk to the jury and explain, hey, this is the juvenile court, this is how we do things, this is why we call it not delinquent, and stuff like that. And so I went back, I was talking to the jurors, and one of the jurors said to me, I can't remember the exact words, but he said something like, when there are inconsistencies in a trial, it's very hard to say that it's beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think, of course, what he was saying is there were inconsistent explanations about what had happened and what had been said and when it had been said in that trial. But I always remembered that, because I think, people tend to say whatever trial it is, whether it's the Reed trial or another trial or the Richens trial, and people sort of line up on one side or the other, they're oftentimes not willing to accept that there's inconsistencies and want to disregard them. But the interesting thing is, and what this juror said, I always remembered that, because inconsistencies make a difference to jurors, because they then have to think, is there reasonable doubt, based on these inconsistencies? So it was pretty interesting. I had a lot of, interesting things happen in trials. So we'll see what
The
happens.
fact that they chose a bench trial, do you think that indicates the strength of the case on the defense side or not? Because I could see two sides of it. Like
Yeah.
technically, I could see just because it's a he said, she said. That's pretty much what this I think boils down to. It's like, do you believe him or her? And when you can't, you have to choose one or the other, then it's not guilty, right? I mean, is that what it comes down to? Do you think that it's because they have a strong defense they pick the bench trial, or am I
Um,
reading too much into it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of times what I found when lawyers would talk to their clients about going with a bench trial is they just thought, this judge is fair. We feel like we'll get a fair shake, but a jury is kind of a crapshoot. So I don't know what they know about this judge and why they feel comfortable with it, but it might relate to that. People keep saying it's a he said, she said. And I think one of the issues here is they sort of conflate intent in the legal standard and how the judge will have to view it with what Kelsey's intent was, on that day. I mean, they're kind of two different things, So I guess, you could look at it. You can, I think a jury, and I'm not sure how the judge will look at it, but I guess, you could look at this in two different ways. That, her intent was suicide. Well, who knows what the evidence is going to be? Is that our statement's going to come in? We don't know. And she wasn't intending to do that. On the other hand, you look at, well, let's say we look at the case in Florida a few years ago where the FBI special agent, young woman, was serving a lawful order on a child predator. It was a warrant. And they knock on the door and a gun comes out. And unfortunately, it happened too fast and she died. And I happen to know that, that special agent had young children, married, she was a young agent. And so, when you look at it, you ask the question, does a police officer, when a weapon comes out, are they required to wait and see? Because, just like the agent in Florida, she wanted to go home at the end of her shift and be with her family. And in that case, the gun came out. And so you ask yourself, would she have had to wait to see what the purpose or intent was behind that? And so, that's one perspective. And, I talk about this only because one of the things I do, one of the jobs I have right now since I left the bench, is that I teach advanced domestic violence law probably 6 times a year with a partner who was a former police chief and is a lawyer. And we do this through the Massachusetts Municipal Police Institute. And we go through. There are a lot of new laws regarding domestic violence in Massachusetts, a new coercive control law, and so we're spending time teaching these officers. But it's interesting. I listen to them, and like I said, they're there because they want to be up on the law, and they want to make sure they're up on everything. But they're like anybody else. They have families. The last thing they want to do is walk into a situation where a firearm comes out. And so I think it's maybe kind of easy for us to say, well, she was going to commit suicide. I don't know how the evidence is going to come in. But what I do know from working with so many police officers is that they're trained that when they're in a domestic situation or an escalated situation and a firearm comes out, they're trained to use their own firearm. So it's hard to know, because in this case, I don't know if they, when they came in, she was, upset, and, maybe she said, I things like, I can't live this way or whatever. That's going to be up to the judge to decide. So I think it goes beyond more than a he said, she said, when you look at it that way. So I think back, when people were talking about this, I was thinking back to a case like early in my career, where I got a message from the state police saying, look, you took this person's child away. I had to, in that case. I mean, they were just serious and concerning and worrisome allegations about this little one. And so we had the emergency hearing, and I explained to him, this is temporary. We hope to have her back with you, but, these are serious. And I explained it anyway. I got a call that night from the state police saying, there's been a threat made, and this person is threatening to kill your children. And so, which is pretty scary. I mean, I thought to myself, I was still a fairly new judge, and I'm thinking, gee, I didn't sign up for that. My kids were little at the time. They were very young. And so there was a BOLO out, and then there was a warrant out, and they were going to serve him with a warrant. And he was pretty upset, and he might have actually had some, emotional, concerns and worries and all of that, like anybody, who's losing a child for whatever reason. And so I asked the question. So, and I it's hard not to, it's easy to remember this case because it was at Thanksgiving, and I had a police car parked in front of my house. I had all my relatives over, and this is a police car parked in front of my house. And so it was like a Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving. But, so when I look at it, and I say, now the police are out looking for this person, and they have a warrant. So there's a BOLO out, so they get a call, they have a warrant, they're going to serve the warrant on this person. And so, I ask myself, if he And he could, there was some issues about, he was, he could be dangerous and all of that. I didn't get into it too much. I'm in the temporary custody hearing. But, so you ask the question, so um, if the police officer who entered the home to serve the warrant and he took a gun out, would the police officer have to wait to find out whether he was suicidal or what his intent was? That's only one side of it, though, because, on Kelsey's side of it, all of a sudden people are walking into that house saying, guess what? We're taking your baby from you, and you're not going to see your baby, and you're not going to have your baby. So go and get clothes. I mean, a judge might look at that and say, geez, there was ample evidence, for people to maybe kind of de-escalate it and think, that she's suicidal. So I want to just put both sides out there that I think the judge will have to look at in terms of what happened. But I don't support either side of this argument only because we don't have the facts yet. But
We
um,
don't. That's the
right,
key. We don't have everything.
right, right.
We don't know. I mean, I know some things, but this is something that you had to put up on Twitter that I think is kind of like the roadmap of some things you wanted to talk about tonight. I think
Yeah,
we already started to talk about the recusal motion, didn't we?
yeah. What the reason that I put that up there is because I think, the whole issue of the recusal motion passed by pretty quickly because all of a sudden they said, you know what, the recusal motion is moot. We don't have to hear it. And I guess my question, to people that are listening and that are in the chat, does anybody find it, I don't know, curious that the recusal motion, which makes incredibly serious allegations regarding the judge, many of them quite supportable within their own motion. And does anybody think it's unusual that all of a sudden, when the recusal motion gets filed, it's very damaging, and then suddenly the Chief Justice was the Chief Justice of the Superior Court, not even the regional administrative justice who actually does judicial assignments, that the Chief Justice all of a sudden intervenes and says, the motion is denied because this judge was set, starting in March, to sit in another session. Well, that's true. She was is maybe scheduled to sit in another session, but then he goes further and says, and she wasn't specially assigned to this. And so, my question was, if you look at the recusal motion, and then they say, well, she wasn't specially assigned. Like when I say specially assigned, it means that in the Superior Court around the state, judges rotate. They rotate from civil sessions to criminal sessions, and every 3 to 6 months, they move to another court, unless they're specially assigned. Like Judge Cannoni was specially assigned to the Reed case, and as soon as she was done, they moved her to Bristol, but that's part of the normal routine. So my court was in a court where the Superior Court, District Court, we were all in the same courthouse together. And so, frequently the Superior Court judges would be rotating. All of a sudden there would be someone new there in 6 months that you didn't, after 6 months that you didn't know. And some would be specially assigned. So I just thought what's really interesting, and I don't know if people had a chance to really know what was in that recusal motion, but what they said in the motion is that she was not assigned, that the judge was not assigned to hear that well, I call it a revocation hearing, but the day that the lawyers went in to modify the order, right? So they go in to modify the order and they say she can't blow into the scram. She's having trouble. It's really hard. And we want to modify the order. And all hell broke loose. I mean, like to this day, because I was listening to it again yesterday, to this day, I have to stop when I'm listening to it. I literally have to stop and like take a few breaths and get up and walk around because it's such an awful hearing.
Yep.
Um, and so I think that, part of the recusal motion is, and they make this clear, they say, this judge was not assigned to that criminal session. And not only do they say it, they prove it because the Superior Court actually, all assignment for judges is released on the Massachusetts
Yeah, they had that
trial court
schedule.
website.
They had the schedule.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all released. So they had support in the recusal motion. They have in the recusal motion, they had support saying she was assigned to a civil session. So here's my question, and it's their question. How is it that she walked into that courtroom in the criminal session, in a courtroom that she wasn't assigned to, and basically heard this case, which was on for just a motion to modify, and then she turned it in, as we say, sua sponte, meaning on her own motion. No one filed a motion for revocation. Probation didn't file it. The district attorney didn't file it. No one was asking to revoke Kelsey Fitzsimmons, bail and hold her without bail. So I seriously, I just find it appalling the way that went down, to say nothing of her demeanor. So how is it she was in the courtroom that day? Like, how does that work? So, I like to tell people, how it works in the court system, but like most of the time in my court, so I was the first justice in my court, so I could assign judges to different courts. Like, we had sessions in Fitchburg, Leominster, Milford, Dudley, all over the county. So I could assign a judge to the Fitchburg session. I could assign a judge to the Milford session. That was my role as first justice. And so, but I can't even imagine a scenario where one day I know that there's a case coming into courtroom 3 and I want to hear it. So I just walk in that courtroom and say, I'm going to hear this case. Like, how does that happen? And
Right.
and the reason I bring it up is because I think people, and the reason I talk about these things, I think people have a right to know how it works behind the scenes, and then to just look at it the way I'm looking at it, the way they're looking at it. It's in their motion. They're very clear. They say this judge, they accuse the judge of somehow working her way to get into that hearing. And they're making allegations because she had a predetermination and that she wanted to lock up Kelsey Fitzsimmons. That's what they're saying. And so the recusal motion, I forget where I found it, but they don't even, when you go into the trial court, in the docket, some of them have images and some of them don't. It's interesting that one doesn't, and so you can't just.
Yeah. The only recordings on her, but I was there. And there was a hearing before that too, where she had a very similar demeanor. Like 2 hearings in a row, you heard her get really nasty, and yeah, it was just
Right.
to be there in person was just like jaw dropping. It was
Right.
just like I've never seen anything like it in my life. I was like, I
Oh,
thought Judge Bev was bad. This is nothing. Like, this is like she was way worse than Judge Beverly Cannoni, in my
well, in
opinion.
terms of demeanor, because I think Judge Cannoni tried to, good morning, everybody. Just ask the question another way. But this judge was, I think, downright, I don't know, angry and
Yeah,
confrontational.
even to Mr. January, the probation
Well,
officer. Like, geez.
that's another thing I want to talk about with this. And so you look at it. So that was one basis for recusal, that she inserted herself into this. And then the other thing is, and of course, I take the position that the Superior Court wanted nothing to do with getting that recusal motion on the record, because they had planned to call Mr. January. So what happened? So they're just saying, we want to modify it, right? So because she can't blow into the scrim. And the judge, wasn't buying it. And so the defense attorneys then said, well, we have the email from the probation officer. And she says, email? That's hearsay. Okay, that drove me crazy. And I'll tell you why. Because on revocation hearings or on a motion to modify the conditions, hearsay is admissible. I mean, every judge knows that. Every lawyer knows that. There's been like hundreds of cases that say it. She knew that that email was admissible, particularly because it's considered reliable because it comes from the probation officer, and he's an assistant chief probation officer. You don't get, that high up, without having a really good and strong record. But you're right. And then, so she's like, that's hearsay. And then, you were there. She looked to the prosecutor and said, what do you want to say about the email? And he's like, I'm not, he knows that the email is admissible. So he's not going to stand up and say, I think it's inadmissible. So what does he say? He says, well, the person who wrote the email is right here. Good for him. So then she's in a bind, and now she has to hear from him. And what does and this was probably the biggest concern I had about, not only about her demeanor, where she actually, if you were there, she told the lawyers they were manipulative. I think at the end she said there was corruption. I mean, she's like saying this to lawyers, and it's like, it's unquestionably problematic, because what they continue to say in their motion is, when a judge has a demeanor like that, or when a judge engages in this kind of back and forth, or when the judge does things like all of a sudden show up and decide she's going to hear it, they're saying it basically reflects poorly on the integrity of the judiciary. And the public then perceives the judiciary as being unfair. And
do you think that's why that they try to just shut it down and reschedule, say, oh, she's got a scheduling conflict, it's a moot point? Is that why they were just trying to shut it all down? They didn't want any more discussion of it?
We're all entitled to our opinion. I'm just asking.
It seems like to me.
Folks, so I see one of the questions that came up is, why is an email hearsay? It's a hearsay if it comes from someone who's an out-of-court declarant. Like if there's an email from, neighbor Joe who's coming in, well, he's not there and can't be cross-examined, so that's why. But this probation officer was there, and so that it's essentially a court record. And then the judge went after him for providing that information to the.
Yeah, it even got worse than that. There's a comment here that reminds us of what she really did too. She filed a complaint against him where he had to actually get, Jeff January, the probation officer there. He had to hire an attorney.
Outrageous. And I'm telling you, does anybody think they were going to let that recusal motion go to a hearing and have him testify? Because good for him. Because I have to tell you, there's no way that the commissioner of the Department of Probation was going to sanction him in any way for doing his job and doing it right. And I will tell you, there are very few people in the system that I had more respect for than the probation officers who provided me with so much information. That's what they do. So they would provide me with just incredible information on cases, just like that. You'd have them stand up in court, they'd swear the probation officer in, and then the probation officer would report and say, Judge, you put him on a bracelet, just so that you didn't have to hold him in DYS. And I got a call in the middle of the night that the bracelet was off, that he cut the bracelet. We weren't able to find him. I mean, the information they have is incredibly important. The way she treated him to me was just appalling. But here's the thing. So then the lawyers, he then just basically spills the truth, right? He says, she came to me the day before, which means, what they're implying or saying is that she had plans to go into that hearing and to take over that hearing. And so it's interesting that the Chief Justice of the Superior Court says, oh, well, just, because the trial's coming up in a new month, she's scheduled to be in a civil session. But they basically showed in that recusal motion that she was scheduled in a civil session anyway. I mean, the trial court's presenting this, by the way, through the Chief Justice, I will say, in 20 years that I was on the bench, since I made the judicial assignments in my court as first justice, and in the Superior Court, they're called a regional administrative justice. And over 20 years on the bench, I never had a call from my statewide chief justice who said, we're going to have you assign, Judge Q to this court. That never happened, never, because there's a system in place already. So it was curious to me that the Chief Justice basically said this motion is denied. Like, I'm thinking, why is the Chief Justice coming into this? And so, so these are all things. I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for this because, of course, a lot of people in the system are pretty angry, that I speak out. But, there has to be a sense of fairness. And I worry about that when I see things like this. Now you have you were there. So, the probation officer, he stood up, right? And it's a motion to modify. And all of a sudden, the judge turns it into a revocation hearing, like, as we say, sua sponte, on her own. She now sort of declares this is a revocation hearing. And so she's asking the lawyers, well, give me evidence. Do you have medical evidence? And well, they weren't there for that, but they did have evidence that she couldn't do it. Right. And you were there. So, right, the probation officer stands up and he says, because she wants to revoke it, finding that Kelsey Fitzsimmons is in violation. And so basically that's kind of what the probation officer is saying. She came to my office the day before and she was kind of looking for a way, to find a violation. And I told her that there wasn't a violation. I mean, he spilled his guts. Good for him. Good for him that he wasn't going to be intimidated. And then, and this is all in the recusal motion. And then and then he stands up and he says, not only does he not find a violation, but what did he say? He said, I watched her use the scram. It's difficult for her. It's very hard for her to forcefully blow into it because she had fractured ribs and lung damage, right? And the judge is like, I mean, I don't know. You were there, right? I don't know exactly what she said, but she totally discounted what he said. And he just stood right. And then he stood right back up and said, after he sat down, and there's no complaint. She's like, I think she said something like, no one asked you, and no one asked you a question. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't believe it, because sometimes probation officers, when I would say something, they would follow up. They'd say, Judge, can I say something? Just so you know, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe it. Her treatment of the probation officer, in my view, was, like just, verbally abusive. And I was just stunned at it. And so the last thing I'll say about this is that I have another perspective, because I knew that, her trying to do the scram would be difficult. And how do I know that? Because while I was in law school, I was a tenured professor teaching cardiopulmonary critical care for a respiratory care program. I had a whole other career working in intensive care units, taking care of people on ventilators. And what the probation officer was describing was something called the forced vital capacity. And that means when you have something like fractured ribs or lung damage, you're not going to be able to blow out as much as much air as someone who doesn't have that damage. That's something that's measured on something called pulmonary spirometry. And and I don't know if people have done it, but they have you blow into a meter and they see how fast there's a curve and how fast it comes out, or whether the curve comes out low. Well, she clearly had, a restrictive pulmonary condition because she had broken ribs. And so the fact, not that I would expect the judge to know any of that, but as I'm listening to it, knowing my past life and having taught this kind of critical care stuff, that I knew that what he was describing was that her forced vital capacity was less, and he described it really well. So sorry, chat room, to go on, and and I know I'll catch it from people who are going to be upset that I spoke about this, but I
Well, only
felt
the people in the system, only
yeah,
the other judges, and I think the probation officers are probably cheering you on right now because
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
sure they don't like how he got treated either.
oh my
And the
God,
thing is, like the medical doctor said, she had severe lung damage. When I hear that severe lung damage, like that, we all need our lungs to breathe. Like
that's
the
right,
lungs and heart, like we can't survive without severe lung damage. That should have been enough to me. I mean,
right.
don't you think? I'm not a medical expert, but when I see severe lung damage and you're breathing into a tube, I would just think, okay, let's do something else. Like that's
Yeah,
just
there's
common
no
sense, right?
question. And then the other thing I think that was, somewhat upsetting is, why is she not allowing an alternative? They said, well,
Yeah.
she'll do urine every day, right? So why would a judge say no to that? So, the recusal motion, I think what people should understand about the recusal motion is there's no way the Superior Court, chief justices, or the chief justice of the entire Massachusetts trial court wanted that evidence coming in, because they, time after time in that motion, they cited the judicial code of conduct and how it related to the judge's behavior, which means, I don't know, maybe they filed a complaint with the Judicial Conduct Commission. It's hard to know, but it seems like the fact that they mooted it, based on she wasn't specially assigned, except for the fact that she's apparently specially assigned herself to hear the case, right? And that she's assigned somewhere else after she had heard all these other things. I mean, it just didn't, for me, it just didn't pass the smell test, I guess is the way I would put it. I mean, and you saw it live, when I go back and listen to it, it's just awful to listen to.
It was not fun to watch. I'll say that. None of
I
it
bet.
was.
So I think, people aren't going to read the recusal motion. So they don't know what's in it because the image doesn't come up. And someone had it, and I was able to, see some of it. But I just think the public has a right to know not only what was in that recusal motion, and then evaluate whether or not the fact that this judge is reassigned was a way to basically, stop the recusal motion from going on the record and calling witnesses, because they were going to call the probation officer. And in my mind, the Superior Court wasn't going to let that happen.
Is there anything that could be done about that after the fact? Like even after Kelsey's trial's over? It seems
No,
like this judge just gets away with it. There's no transparency.
yeah, I mean, I think it would be up to the lawyers if they think there are violations of the Judicial Code of Ethics and they can, go through that. Then it's it's up to the Judicial Conduct Commission. But you will never hear that because those cases are all confidential unless there's the kind of discipline that brings it into the public sector. But I think I would say it's naive for people to think that the higher ups in the court system are not aware of how the optics are in certain cases and how the public is responding to it. In this case, if if what I just said wasn't true, then, it just seems odd to me that the Chief Justice of the Superior Court, just said, this judge it was not specially assigned and is going to another court, because there's a regional administrative judge in every superior court that kind of handles, you're in this courtroom, you're in that courtroom. And like you said, the thing that didn't work in their favor was that, they print out, they tell you where the judges are sitting. So that's it on the recusal motion and the, the serious allegations. They are alleging bias and serious improprieties, as well as, a very inappropriate demeanor. Those things were all part of that recusal motion. So that's it.
Talked about no contact orders with baby based on what evidence? This is my big question.
Yeah.
I can't figure that out. Why she doesn't even get a supervised visit?
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you that this is probably one of the biggest issues that I have ever had, as a judge, both when I was a judge and after I left the bench. Anytime there's a no contact order, between a parent and child, that, from a constitutional perspective, you're essentially violating a person's rights, because it sort of functions as a termination of parental rights, meaning that you're basically severing the relationship between a parent and a child, which is what happens in a termination of parental rights in child abuse cases. And so the fact that this judge, took the bench when she wasn't assigned to that case, then and then made orders that Kelsey could not have contact with her child, to me, is probably, I think, one of the most upsetting and appalling aspects of this case. I mean, I've done thousands of child abuse cases, and in cases that involve DCF, the department has to allow for visits, even if they're supervised visits, because you don't destroy the bond between a parent and child, and particularly a baby, who is being breastfed. And, while, when you look at the list of things that judges commonly order, as conditions, when there's a bail hearing, or when people are being held as dangerous. Well, in the first case, it was a bail hearing, and there was like no contact with the no contact order. The question becomes, how does that happen, as part of a bail or revocation hearing? And on what authority or under what legal principle did a superior court judge decide that this mother cannot even see her baby? I don't care if she's in jail or not. I had hundreds of cases, where you had a parent in jail, and I would tell the department, you need to take that child. Now, there were times when you'd have a kid who's like 11 or 12, who didn't want to go to the jail, who was afraid or whatever. And, you could do it by FaceTime or something like that. But with a baby, and she's at the Chicopee Detention Center, where there's, space and availability, for parents to bond with their children, it's appalling and it's outrageous. Because if in any case, if I was going to order that a parent have no contact with a child, which was pretty rare, every once in a while there would be a motion from the department, to do that, I had to make a finding that contact would be harmful to the child. And so how did this judge make that determination, is what I don't understand. On the basis of what? There's no history of child abuse by the mother, none. And so what she did was basically usurp the role of the family court. So now I'm in juvenile court, then the family court, which handles cases like paternity cases like this, because it's filed as a paternity because they win. So it's a custody case. So this is what you have here. DCF didn't get involved, and likely because the father went to the probate court. He asked for a restraining order. He filed for temporary orders. And so the departments, the children and family is going to say, well, we're not going to get into it because, this judge gave him custody, and this judge, isn't saying that there's abuse. Now, a lot of information has come out about the father since then. I think that will be part of any custody hearing. However, basically so they did the temporary custody order in the probate and family court, and they gave him legal and physical custody, but they made no orders regarding visitation. That order, according to what's written in the motion just filed by Kelsey's lawyers to, go ahead and have and revisit the temporary custody hearing. So the standard in order to get a judge to change a temporary custody order or even a permanent custody order in the family court is that there has to be a change in circumstances. So, they have filed a temporary custody, a request for modifying the temporary custody order, saying, hey, there's a big change in circumstances. First of all, the new judge has removed that requirement that she not have contact with the child. I think the new judge did that immediately because they're well aware that there was no evidence to support the fact that she could not see her child. None was provided. In the probate and family court, in these circumstances, they have to find that there's a substantial risk, that there's either serious abuse or substantial risk of abuse in order to stop contact between a parent and child. How do you do that? How do you do that with Kelsey Fitzsimmons? I mean, first of all, she's gone to, has already gone through mental health counseling. She's still in it. She's doing well. There's evidence that she's doing well. Even the judge today, interestingly, what did he say? He found that she's perfectly competent, that there's no mental illness or drugs or anything getting in the way. So he makes that finding. So how is a probate court going to find something else? I mean, who knows what evidence they're going to present? But I think what's the most appalling and frightening aspect, of how the Superior Court acted in this case is that she's been denied contact with her child for 9 or 10 months. And that is incredibly, incredibly upsetting and, in my view, incredibly unjust and unfair, and in my view, a violation of her constitutional rights because it effectively acted like a termination of parental rights, and because the Superior Court made no findings. Like if I suspended visits, I had to make findings, written findings, to say, this is why I'm suspending it.
Why? Yeah.
And not, they have to do that in the probate and family court. They have to make written findings. So now that they're in court on a temporary temporary custody order, there'll be a hearing. But I think the judge in the Superior Court quickly, not only relaxed it and saying, well, there's evidence that, her mental health is in a much better situation. No one's going to come out and say, we should have
screwed up.
That. But, well, I mean, the judge ordered it. And basically, after they've dropped it, and he has custody, right? And so there's no reason that he can't allow her to see the child. But has that happened? No, it hasn't happened. And so she's still not seeing her child. It makes my blood boil. I guess I will say that I'm upset about it because you have this young woman who gave birth to that child. And she had postpartum depression. And sometimes with postpartum depression, there has to be a period of time to separate custody of the child, because there have been people in severe postpartum depression that have harmed their child, just like the case that's coming up with the mom who was the nurse and, she, just killed her 3 children and jumped out the window. She didn't die. I mean, that's like about as severe as
Nancy.
postpartum depression as you can get. So you can clearly understand in situations like that. And I've had cases, where the department intervened where there was severe postpartum depression. That's and so you can understand why they're saying we can't put the baby in that person's custody until these issues are resolved. You can understand that. What I can't understand is she can't see her baby at all. She
Yeah,
cannot
no
see her baby,
supervised
even with a
visit.
supervisor, even with someone standing there, she can't see her baby. So,
That's outrageous.
um, so
This
that's
this new judge also made a ruling that she could move out of her mom's house into a place in, another town. Um, when that ruling, like when he made that kind of ruling, Kelsey really smiled in court, and I have a feeling it was because of, you know, the possibility of getting her, some parental rights back for her son, her baby. Does that help? Do you think that helps the judge allowing her to live on her own? Or am I
Oh, yeah.
reading too
I
much
mean,
into that?
because, you're looking towards reunification. It's kind of a statement that the judge was saying, her mental health is stable enough that she doesn't need someone, watching her. I think she's on a GPS monitor, but
She is.
there's a lot of animosity I know between, her and um, the father of the child. But yeah, I mean, I think, if DCF had gotten this case before they got into the probate and family court, they would have had to, even what they would have done is said, we have to provide visits. And then what I would do, because there were times where there were no contact orders with children on restraining orders. That would happen before I got the case through DCF. And what I would say to the lawyers is, look, go back to the judge in the district court and tell the judge DCF now has custody, and we're going to order visitation through DCF regulation, supervised visits. So please ask the district court judge to vacate that order, no contact order that came in on an emergency thing, because sometimes that happened on emergency restraining orders where it's getting issued, and something happened to the child during a domestic event or something like that, and you're issuing a very temporary order on a restraining order because that's only in effect for 10 days. But so you can see that when someone's in the throes of a very, very, very deep um, situation like she was in, like Kelsey was in, having to deal with postpartum depression, you can see why a judge might say, look, it's just not, it's dangerous at this point for her to have the baby until they can resolve it medically and through counseling. But what I want people to know is that's very, 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 very different than whether or not a mother can actually see her baby and have visits, because there's all kinds of people that do supervised visits. And so I think probably more upsetting than anything for me in this case is that a mother has been deprived of contact with her child for over 9 months. It's just, in my view, it's a was a due process violation, a violation of her constitutional rights, 14th Amendment violation. So that's why I kind of spoke out and listed no contact orders with a baby based on what evidence. I don't know. You were in the court. Did the judge say why she couldn't have contact with her child? It's like,
I think she just said you're a danger. You're dangerous is basically the tone. Yeah.
yeah, I don't. It's 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 just unbelievable, unbelievably and unbelievably upsetting. And I will say, I found it just, I just, my heart broke for her. I just found it really upsetting that, she was just not going to be able to see this child. It's unbelievable. So that was that.
It really is. It's shocking. I know that they're
That's the
intending to go
right
back to
word. Right.
family court very soon. Um, I'm just wondering, on some of the stuff that's coming out in Justin, like Yeah, not so much the cannabis smoking, but like the breaking into the house stuff. Is there any chance he loses custody? Do you think that they try to take custody away? Do you think Kelsey's side tries to drive the screws in on him or not? Or just
No.
it's just to
It's
try to
hard
get
to
her some.
know. It's hard to know because this is such a chaotic and deeply troubled relationship, how a judge is going to view it. And, they'll view it as a safety issue. Whether he'll retain sole legal and physical custody, I don't think so. But, that's up to a probate judge. And, they're going to put a lot of evidence in about her current mental health status and that she's doing quite well. And so I think, that, the problem is it's shared legal custody is one thing. Shared physical custody is another thing, because with shared physical custody, when a child is going back and forth 1 week with you, 1 week with you, that's very difficult to do when people don't get along. And courts almost never will allow joint physical custody unless people are able to work together and basically in well together in harmony. And
Mm.
that doesn't look like it's going to
So that
happen.
so that could work against her, it sounds like, in terms of getting custody, maybe.
Well, it's not to say that she won't get, that she won't get it. What they just say it's joint custody, and with the residence, the primary residence being at such and such a place,
Yeah.
as opposed to saying visitation. They almost don't use that word anymore. So we'll see what the initial hearing is, but I do believe she'll be seeing her child soon. I mean, the optics here is so bad for the trial court. And the probate court never stopped her visits. It's just that the order from the Superior Court is, I think, what really caused the problem with visits. So, yeah, it's
I got a
terrible.
question here. What about the son, the child, the baby, Caden? What about his constitutional right to see his parents? That might be a
Yeah,
dumb question, but
yeah.
does the baby have rights?
Yes, the baby does have rights, and the courts always, it's just the way the courts say it, sort of always bothered me. But of course, these children have rights. There should be a lawyer appointed for the child in this, but they don't usually do that in this type of custody case, and so, but in this case, the likelihood is they're going to appoint a guardian ad litem to investigate and make recommendations. I mean, as a lawyer, I was a guardian ad litem in hundreds of cases where the judge would say, "What's your recommendation for who should have custody?" and investigate all these issues. And I did that hundreds of times. And so that's what's going to happen. They're going to appoint a guardian ad litem to investigate and make recommendations. And I can see that is definitely something that's going to happen in this case. The judge isn't going to just hear from the lawyers. I mean, the judge may make temporary orders for visitation, but ultimately, what happens is there's going to be a guardian ad litem to investigate and make recommendations.
What if Kelsey's found guilty? Let's just say she's found guilty of the charge. Is that going to affect her parental rights a lot or not?
I don't think
Probably not.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, criminal convictions, unless they relate to something that can impede the best interest of a child, I are not really going to be considered. I mean, I had tons of cases where there were criminal charges, and sometimes you consider them because it can relate to the child, and in other times, it didn't make any difference to me.
Do you want to? We'll take a controversial question. I think you'll be able to hit this out of the park. What do you about the Tin Man show? It says these women in positions of power are dangerous. The evidence is undeniable. What, I mean, I look at the friggin' all the world's problems right now. I mean, we're looking at maybe $200 oil that didn't. There was no women involved in that. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
think,
think I think you're missing the boat, Tim.
I
Go
think
ahead.
within the context of the court, if people, you've had these two major trials like Judge Canoni and
Oh,
this particular judge, where people, sort of had this view this sort of view of unfairness. But look at Judge Frenier in the Walsh case. Amazing
She was
judge.
great.
Absolutely amazing. Amazing in every way. Good control of the courtroom, just
She
everything,
seems nice
had
too.
amazing control of the courtroom. Her demeanor was incredible. Her knowledge of the law was, beyond dispute. There are so many amazing women judges in the Massachusetts trial court. And even in my court, there are 42 juvenile court judges. The majority of them are women. And I have to say, I have great respect, for the colleagues I worked with. Their goal was always to do what was in the best interest of the child and to, make very reasoned decisions. So I guess that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah,
on
come
that
on,
one.
Tim. We have a lot of problems in the world, and who's run the world most of the time? It's been men. Let's be serious. Like, there's a lot of blame to go around. Rent's too high, bro. This one, I don't know. They're asking about this audio and text. There was some new text that the prosecution
Yeah.
has posted. I haven't heard this audio. I guess there's some audio phone calls. I don't know if you've heard any of it. Do you think any of this stuff is coming in on the
And the
trial?
audio phone calls that were made, like on 911, when he was asking the police, I have to get my stuff and things like that.
Yes. And I think there was some family member calls too. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how they
his
got those, but
sister.
I'm hearing,
Yeah, I
yeah.
heard a little bit of that. I heard some of that call. I don't know if it's going to come in. I think it will come in the temporary custody hearing because there's a sense in that call that he was trying to use the police to kind of approve him going into the house or he was asking questions about custody. I did hear a little of that. The text messages, I read those today, are two people
Not getting
who
along.
are angry with each other
Right.
and just going back and forth. Well, do you want to see your son or do you not? He's going to a daycare. Why is he going to a daycare? Well, because he needs to be in daycare. Do you want to come with me? I have no gas. I already told you I can't come. It's that kind of thing, back and forth. I don't think it helps either of them. And I'm not sure it hurts either of them. But it's kind of a sad statement about where their relationship was. She's
Yeah.
asking questions, should I forget the deposit on the wedding? Because he's saying, I need time and space and I don't want to lose the deposit. So there were things like that. Do I think that'll have any relevance? I mean, in my mind, based on what I read, I think it has zero relevance. But they're saying that the prosecutor wants to bring it in to show that, she could be aggressive, but I didn't read that as aggression. I read that as, yeah, someone who's pretty angry that her fiance is, not coming to the house and, not seeing the son. And then he's saying, something like, I'm happy to pick him up. And then he's like, I have no money. I have no gas in the truck. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, I don't know. I just read it quickly, but I see no relevance to it in terms of defining her as someone, who was aggressive enough to pick up a gun and kind of shoot a police officer, a friend of hers. I think it's totally irrelevant. I thought it was a red herring. We'll see what they do with it at the trial. I don't know, but I'm just saying what I read. I mean, you just have two people, you know, trying to get one up on each other. And, I think it's probably not uncommon in relationships that are collapsing.
I think we've all seen that. I mean, I think if you've been in a relationship with somebody, you've probably had some texts like that back and forth, even,
Yeah.
you know, and then
I
you make
think,
up the next day.
yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that's the nature of this stuff. You
And at
gotta,
the end of it, she says, I love you,
you're right.
so
I
I
didn't think it
wasn't,
looked. I read them to the text. I haven't really heard the voicemails, but I read the text, and I just when I read them, I said, I don't think this makes either one of them look terrible.
nope.
That it just looked like these are two people not getting along,
Yep.
and they're both kind of sticking to their guns. Like
You are
you're,
right.
yeah,
It's a collapsing relationship. So,
yeah.
yeah. I agree. So, well, there's a lot ahead, that's for sure, right?
Yeah. Here's a comment from Nina. She says it's not a dispute that she pulled out the gun. Isn't that itself a case where she put others in danger? Love, Judge Erskine, and your book. Nina makes a good question. This is she's more doubtful about this Kelsey Fitzsimmons thing, and this is a good point. Like,
Well,
just pulling out the gun, doesn't that make her guilty?
I think,
Some
yeah, there's a whole section when, you'll hear, well, you won't hear the instructions, but if you look at the instructions for it, it's a little more complicated than that. But you raise a good question, and actually, I think what Nina is saying is kind of what I was trying to talk about earlier. That when in a domestic, like, she's a police officer, she knows how to use a gun, and should she have, and this is something maybe the judge will consider, should she have um, not known that the moment that she pulled out a gun, that the person that was in the room there was likely to draw his service weapon, because that's how they're trained, and she was trained the same way. You walk into a situation, into a domestic situation, if a firearm comes out, there's a strong likelihood that the police are going to draw their service weapon. So I think that's, maybe I think that's what Nina's saying. There is no dispute that the gun came out. I think that's absolutely correct. Where it's going to get a little murkier is over the intent issue. So I'm just looking at the jury instruction. Although there's attempted battery, and then there's like immediate threatened battery for this charge. And so the defendant is charged with assault with a dangerous weapon by making an immediate threat to commit a battery with a dangerous weapon. So to prove the defendant guilty, the Commonwealth must prove three things beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is how they would read it to a jury, because all judges get these are the jury instructions, and all judges have a book with the jury instructions. I mean, they can be altered a bit. There are alternative instructions, but every judge gets these. And so to prove the defendant guilty, the Commonwealth must prove three things beyond a reasonable doubt, which means this judge has to decide each and every one of those things was proved by the Commonwealth and proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Not all together did they present, a case that where there was reasonable doubt. So first, the defendant intended to put the victim in fear of an immediate battery. So he'll probably testify, this gun came out, I was in fear. Second, the defendant engaged in some conduct toward the victim which the victim reasonably perceived as immediately threatening a battery. So, so Nina raises this question: is pulling out a gun enough for that second, for that second element? And so, third, the assault was committed with a dangerous weapon, and so that's the third element. So, the issue is the first element. The Commonwealth must prove that the defendant intended to put the fear of imminent battery. And a battery, of course, is a touching that's either offensive or likely to cause bodily harm. So that's where I think the case, that's, what's at the heart of the case, because they're saying, look, her intent was to commit suicide. So therefore, they really have not met the first element beyond a reasonable doubt. How that's coming in, I don't know. But again, first element, the defendant intended to put the victim in fear of an immediate battery. So this is
That's the hard
boiling
part of
down
proof,
to that's,
right?
that's so Nina, that's a good question. And Nina, thank you for the book. For getting the book. I really appreciate
We
that.
have a lot of people in the chat who said they bought the book and they're happy that they bought the book. For people who want to know, the book is called A Cruel Injustice: How Massachusetts Put 4-Year-Old Harmony in the Hands of a Monster by Carol Erskine. Can get it on Amazon, a bunch of other places, or Carol Erskine as well.
Yeah, it's best.
Um,
I'm actually not selling it on Carol. It's on there, but it will just get you to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. They have it.
there you go.
It's been back ordered on Amazon, so people have been contacting me. So I said you can get it on Barnes and Noble in a shorter period of time. But of course, this is a promise I made to the dads of. This was a promise I made to the dads of Harmony's brother, whose adoption I did, when they said, "What happened? What happened in Massachusetts?" And I said, "Okay, let's find out." And I think probably the best part of the book is the 4 chapters near the very end where they write about their family and how they came to have Jameson. And to this day, and of course, I asked them questions. I proposed a list of questions, and then they sat there and answered them, and they recorded it. And of course, it came out as a script because Blair Miller is a well-known Emmy Award-winning reporter, and he's a anchor in Atlanta. So that's how they did it. And yeah, you can get the ebook, which is for me is easier to read because
I love
the
ebooks.
print is not all that easy.
Yeah.
Um, but I can tell you Jameson is doing really well in their care, and they have a wonderful family. But I have a book aside for Jameson when he gets older, so he can know what happened. And that was it. But I always say the hardest part of the interview for me in the book was when they got to the point where they had to tell Jameson that Harmony had died, because he would usually run to the door when the doorbell rang saying, "Harmony's coming to visit
Oh my
me."
God.
And he would see little girls at the park who had blonde hair and glasses and say, "Harmony's here, are you my sister?" And so when they tell him, and they describe it, it's in the book, and Jonathan describes it they're having a conversation, Blair and Jonathan says, "And he was 5 years old, and he just collapsed in your arms and sobbed and said, I wish he wouldn't have died." So it's a tough read in that respect, and it's also very graphic about what happened when Massachusetts let her go to New Hampshire, and her father murdered her in the back seat of a car for wetting her pants. I mean, so I will say I'm holding my breath, waiting for the appeal decision to come down. Um, that should be any day now. So it's hard for them too, because they have to wait. Will there be
Oh,
another trial, or have we put this guy away for life, who
oh, I hope
constantly
not.
beat her and was just a brutal, violent person? So my hope is he's away for life. That's of
Let's
course
hope
what
so.
we're hoping for.
That's
So
horrible thinking about the brother finding out like that. Just oh,
yeah, and he's just 8 or 9 now, so they have not told him. He doesn't know how she died. He's just too
oh,
young for that.
yeah,
Because
definitely.
it's so horrible. They basically said someone didn't take care of her. He doesn't really know what that means, but it's going to be difficult, I think. Um, and you know, it was I met them when Blair came to talk on National Adoption Day, and they had 2 kids at the time. And at the time, I said, maybe you guys should adopt from DCF, because they were impressed with all these families that had adopted kids. And they called me a year later and said, we've been through the process, and we're going to foster a child and hope to adopt him. And we became very, very close friends from that time on. Our families are very close and have a really close relationship with them and their boys. And so, um, it's for me, it's great, because I did many adoptions. You don't often get to see how things turned out, but I get to watch Jameson grow and do well. And you're right, Adam is the worst, and for the person that said that. And she was a beautiful little girl, and it's just very sad. This is a sad
Sick.
story. So, but I appreciate you, putting the book up. When
Oh,
when
totally.
and I never ask people to do that, you or anybody else. because that's not why I do this. But when it happens, and the sales of the book go up, I think I just sent my 5th royalty check to the Dave Thomas
Yes, we want
Foundation.
it. We want more royalty checks going to the Dave Thomas Fund.
It just
So
goes.
if you buy the book, it goes to a good cause too, the proceeds.
Yeah.
So
But thanks, Mike. That's a lot to talk about. So,
it is.
and thanks to the folks in the chat. I always
I
appreciate the
love that they buy books. I love our audience loves to buy books. It's
Yeah, well, I
awesome.
always appreciate the people in the chat. I mean,
Yeah,
they've
me
always
too.
been very kind to me, and uh, I really appreciate that, and as well on X that people are supportive of the child advocacy and our push for changes in the laws. It's it. I will say that it's one of the things that keeps me going because it's pretty hard to fight the government on this stuff. So
There's a question about did they have the same father?
no.
No. So Adam's not the father of
Yeah,
those kids.
no, Jameson's father was unknown, so the court just entered a termination of his rights. They published notice saying if you're the father of this
Well,
child
that's
or
good
whatever.
for Jameson.
Yeah, it really is. I will tell you, he's one of the smartest kids I have ever met. He has an incredible memory and he's incredibly smart. So talking to him is just a real joy. He's funny and he's smart. But he has this burden of harmony. I mean, there was a time recently where he had friends over and someone said, well, I have a sister. Do you have a sister? And that was a tough thing. So he's going to have to deal with those issues. His brothers are wonderful, and they all have their own. They'll have their own thing. Jameson likes boxing. He's really
Oh,
into
nice.
that. His brother Cash, who I think is 11, is like going to be. I think he's going to be a veterinarian. He loves animals. He's also very athletic, and Zeke is like into acting and playing the guitar. He actually has been in Stranger Things.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, because that's
Big
filmed
TV
in
show.
Atlanta.
Or big,
So
I don't know what they call it. Big streaming show. I say
yeah,
TV. Streaming, I
yeah.
guess is what.
Stranger Things,
Yeah.
kind of in scenes, and I don't know if he has lines, but he's like very much into acting. So, and I know I know they don't mind me talking about it, but they're wonderful people. But thank you, Mike. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you. We got a couple more questions here. This
Sure.
one I don't even know what it's about. I'm trying to figure it out, but maybe you know. They said, Mike, can you clarify with Carol if the baby being on restraints? Talk about Caden, I guess. That came in earlier. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I'm
what
not
they
sure
mean
what
by the
that means.
question.
If it means like
Yeah.
a restraining order, if it was part of the restraining order, because you
Okay.
can file a restraining order on behalf of yourself and on behalf of the baby
Okay.
and ask for custody on a restraining order. So I suspect that's what it is. And I'm not sure. He did file a restraining order, and the restraining order was issued ex parte. And that's always troubling. Lots of restraining orders are issued ex parte because the judge is only hearing one side of it. So what a lot of people don't know, I'll tell you this little secret of the system, is if someone needs a restraining order on a Saturday or a Sunday or after 4:30 when the courts close, there's a system called the judicial response system. And every judge, so every 7 months or so, they would send me a phone and they send the number out to these police departments. And there are 8 judges that cover 8 different parts of the state. And then all night long, you would get these calls for restraining orders. And so they're all ex parte. Someone's calling and saying, they go to the police, and then the police have to advise them that if they want a restraining order, they will call a judge. And so all night long or all weekend long, you're getting calls from the police department saying, I have a female here, she's seeking a restraining order, and the judge will either talk to that person or talk to the police officer and then make an order. And it's not only for restraining orders, it's for search warrants and red flag issues or issues of removing firearms and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ex parte orders, but I'm guessing that's what the question meant, whether or not a baby can be part of.
I think so.
Yes, there's a
I
line for custody on the restraining order. So, and then they have to go into court is the next open court day if they want to continue. It's only allowable until the next day or the next court day.
until somebody can show up and give them the other side.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
Here's a question too: if Justin is on, let's say, illegal drugs, because I don't think cannabis matters anymore to the law, like alcohol, unless you're like abusing it. But let's say if he is on some kind of illegal drugs, can the defense lawyer him or
Well,
the family court
on
even?
the family court, yes, they can ask and say they want drug, and they have asked in their temporary orders. They ask for a hair follicle test,
And
and
go
and I
ahead.
think they asked for hair follicle test for him, not for her, although I think she'd be willing to do it. But what I will say is when alcohol or marijuana gets in the way of people being able to parent, in other words, if someone's using alcohol or marijuana in a way that there's neglect, that the child's not being fed, or there's some abuse, or the child's being left alone for hours at a time, and it's like a 4-year-old child, then of course you can consider it. As far as other drugs like opiates, I mean, thousands of cases that I heard were related to substance abuse and its connection to neglect, that the substance abuse, not by itself, but more so that the substance abuse is connected to one's ability to parent safely. So
So you have
that's,
to tie that to the behavior to the kind of like neglect or yeah, you have
yeah.
to tie it to the behavior.
Yeah, I mean, they used to just file on every child that was born positive for opiates in nurseries. I'm not sure they do that anymore because, the use of substance alone, basically what the department will do is not necessarily remove the child, but put services in place to keep the child at home. That should be the first goal. Can we keep the child at home and put services in place? So, but yeah, I mean, substances plays a big role in custody cases. I mean, I've just heard thousands and thousands of those cases. It's just one of the main things, along with domestic violence, and then there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of those things, are
So
cases.
let me ask you this, because if the family court said we want you to take a drug test to Justin, would he have to do it, or could he say like I don't feel comfortable doing this because I'm a firefighter and I don't want to lose my job or I don't want to use the get. Could he say no to it and still keep custody? Like
Well,
how
I
would that
think
work?
if they order it, and I don't, and as a general
They
rule,
would
they
order.
don't order drug testing.
Okay.
If they do and he doesn't do it, then, they can make orders, saying, we have concerns about the safety of the child, or they can say, you're violating a clear, unequivocal order, so you're in contempt and we're going to hold you. But mostly they don't do that. I rarely ordered drug tests. And lots of times I was asked to, but I rarely ordered it. But I think in a case like this, where substances is an issue, there's, I think his lawyers are going to have to say to the judge he's not using substances, and a lot of times they say he's willing to do drug testing, if you leave the child with
Or
him. It usually more often than not, it happens like that, sort of on a voluntary basis.
so it's more usually voluntary. That makes
Yeah, I
sense.
don't think he's not allowed to use, I think, marijuana or alcohol as a firefighter. I'm not sure, but I think that's one of the rules.
I think they can drink alcohol. I think
Yeah,
maybe
alcohol,
I'm wrong,
yes.
but
Yeah, but I
I
don't
think
think
cannabis not.
marijuana.
Yeah.
So,
They also have a question about your petition. You had a petition with the U.S. attorney.
right.
Um, what's going on with that?
Well,
Where?
that's pending. Initially, the U.S. attorney sent me a letter saying, if you need a lawyer for your criminal case, you can call this number. It was just sent out by a paralegal. It literally came the next day. But I've been in touch with people in Washington, D.C., because it basically went to the DOJ. And basically what they're saying is the DOJ needs to read it, make a decision, and then if they're going to do an investigation, they can they'll talk to the U.S. Attorney in Massachusetts. It is with the DOJ right now. And we have some people helping us in Washington, D.C., not only a congressman helping us, but other people. It's also at Health and Human Services right now, and we're getting some help there at the Child and Family Division of Health and Human Services. So I'm looking for them to just make changes in the law regarding kids with disabilities, because the 3 kids I highlighted in that petition all had disabilities, and the way that they got services or didn't get services were, in my view, a violation of federal law. And that's the argument I made in 56 pages of the petition that I filed. And it's getting some attention in Massachusetts as well, because they don't want the feds interfering. And so I have some help from some senators in Massachusetts, who want to work on creating changes in the legislation here, without the feds. So we'll see, but it's a long process, and it's just so hard to get the attention of people. But, as I think as WCVB showed, aside from the fact that these 3 children died horrible deaths, I mean, Harmony had disabilities. No one brought it into court to the judge. No one told the judge about it. They sent her with him, and he beat her to death. And then David Almond was autistic, and they basically starved him to death right in front of the department's noses. And then little Azella Ortiz, she had severe head injuries. And what I said was, also what I said to the DOJ is, these are 3 kids, but there have been 7 children that have been murdered in Massachusetts in the last 12 years. Someone needs to look at this. Someone has to look at it. I predicted that there would be another death in Massachusetts when I launched my book. And it was done at the Hanover Theater in Worcester in the conservatory. And when I spoke that day, I said, if there are no changes, there will be another death. And Azella Ortiz died a month later from head injuries. So I predicted it. I knew it would happen, and it will happen again. So this is why I do these kind of podcasts, to get the word out there. And people are great. I look at the people that are in the chat, they've all been great, and I really appreciate it. But I don't want to keep them any longer either.
No, it's just terrible to think like that you predicted that and then it happened. It's like those are the predictions I hate to see. It's I once predicted a worker was going to die in the cannabis industry because I had all these workers coming on, and then one died. And I actually didn't predict it; the workers did. They came on my show, and they told
Wow.
us that. And
Wow.
it just sucks when you see stuff like that happen that you know is
And
preventable.
what's going to happen. Right.
Yeah, because
I know.
people aren't doing the job. The OSHA's
Yeah.
not. You know, it's
I
this
know.
new industry, and there was a lot of risks, and people overlooked it, and
Yeah.
it's still that way. Unfortunately, they've made some steps, but this is even worse because children.
Isn't it?
I hate anything that bad happens to workers. That's my pet peeve. But children is even worse. That's like another level that
Yeah.
just.
Well, I think the reason for it is that the department and the state now have prioritized family preservation at all costs. Send kids back or don't remove them in the first place. And when you prioritize family preservation in without considering whether there are safety risks to a child, children are going to die, and that's what's happening in Massachusetts. And it's happening in a lot of states around the country. But I see a lot of people, prayers for harmony and all of that, which I'm so grateful to people for that. And I'll actually send this to Blair and Jonathan so they can see these comments from people, just asking about Jameson, praying for him and for harmony. I think, they'll appreciate that. So thank you very much. These folks in the chat have been just wonderful.
Definitely prayers for Jameson. Just it's a lot for a young boy to go through.
Right.
I yeah. I had another question because I had saw you posted about one of our upcoming guests, Diana DiZoglio. She's been on the show a bunch of times. She's coming up later this month, I think on the 25th, which is probably about a week from now. Yeah, next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, Diana DiZoglio is going to be here on the show. Um, I saw you posted some things about her, some support. What do you think about her? What do you like? What are you supporting?
Well, I love Diana, and yes, I when of course, the Senate, Mariano and Spilka, who I have to say don't have a lot of respect for, particularly in this regard. That it came out basically that then the trial court, the chief of the appeals court, and the chief justice of the Massachusetts trial court said they don't have to comply with her request to basically audit their website to make sure that disabled people have access to the trial court. That's what they said. So I posted, I maybe a little too cynically, because then the Herald picked it up and printed, but I said, if only I had known during those years that I was the first justice in my court and was ordered to comply with the state auditor. If only I had known that I didn't have to comply, it could have saved me hours of work. And I said, how pathetic is it that these chief justices now say they don't have to comply with the audit? Well, the Herald picked it up, and then it was in the Herald. But I've been in touch directly with Diana. We've spoken several times, just having conversations about, the constitutionality issues, where they're basically claiming it's unconstitutional for the legislature to be audited. And I've said, well, geez, I was in a separate branch of government, it was audited multiple times. So why all of a sudden? And so, yeah, I've had a number of conversations, and she's very appreciative of the fact, that I came out and said this, because, she, not only I said it, but one of the former justices of the Supreme Judicial Court said, at least appoint, she wants a special attorney appointed, and they denied her that. So it just seems like, I don't know, I just know I voted for it. 72% of the people in Massachusetts voted for them to audit the
I voted for it.
legislature. And
Oh
everybody's
yeah.
asking the same question, right? What are they
Why?
hiding that they're
Yeah, where's
trying
our
to
audit? That's actually hey, I'm glad you said that. That's the we call them thumbnails on YouTube, but that's what I have a pic on the thumbnail. It's a picture of Diana DiZoglio with the AG and the governor, and it says, "What are they hiding?" I mean,
Yep,
that is the question. What are they hiding? It's
yep,
like,
yep,
what are you afraid of?
yep, yep. That's the question. It's just the question. And so, yeah, I've been very supportive of her, and I've been public about it. I don't know if I'll be as cynical as I was if the Herald's going to pick up my, and then, and they basically, then they wrote about it the next day saying she has a lot of support, including a fiery comment from Judge Erskine. Sometimes I have to be careful
On
because,
Twitter.
you
They
know,
they watch you on Twitter. That's what I'm
yes,
noticing.
and
Is these
because,
news writers, they're smart.
and
They're like, we instead of making a phone call, just check her Twitter and
right,
quote her
and they do call, because Charlie McKenna did actually contact me today to see if I wanted to say
from
anything
Mass
more than what
Live.
he wrote in Mass Live. But you know, I guess, because people are like, oh, this person's a judge and said that, and I get that, but I never viewed my like opinion on something to be any more important than anyone else's. I mean, that's just the way I've always been. I mean, I grew up in a family of 6 kids. My dad was a cobbler. He owned a business. Like that's like where I come from. So like this whole thing about, with you, you'll text me, hey, Judge, or whatever. I always, don't, you
Don't
know,
call me Judge, call me
that's
Carol.
just, so
Yeah,
I have to, people tell me, and I think one of the former judges who's retired sent a message saying, you have to remember that when you say things, people, take it in a more serious way. But, uh, you know, uh, that's just, I mean, that's just not who I am. So, and that because I
well,
always tell
I
you.
love that. That's kind of I always, because, when I invite a senator or whoever, I always use the title because I think they don't know me sometimes when I'm inviting them on the show. So it shows that I have a level of respect right there that I'll use the title. But you always know the real ones when they get back and say, just call me Ed. Just
Yeah.
call me
Yeah.
like Ed Markey said to me, or you say don't just call me Carol. Just
Yeah.
Carol. You don't have to call me Judge.
Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, because when I interviewed with the governor's legal counsel before I was appointed by the governor, the legal counsel said to me, "Listen, when you get on a bench, don't get caught up in, sort of the feeling of, that there's prestige or whatever. If you get caught up in that, you can make mistakes." So I just wanted to let you know. And so what I said, I looked him right in the eye. I'm like, "Hey, I'm the daughter of a cobbler. I'm just telling you that." My dad, was a businessman and ran that shoe repair shop, his whole life. But that's where I come from. So I'm not coming from, I'm coming from a life, that I loved and had a wonderful family, and that's the way I look at it. So when I'm in the juvenile court, that's the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at it like these people want to be a family. What can I do to make this work? I never and I will just tell everybody this because I still, laugh about it. So of course, every time you walk into a courtroom, so in the morning I'd walk in, all rise, and then they do this whole cry, all persons having anything to do before the Honorable Judge Erskine draw near, or you shall be heard. They call it the cry. And I'm like, I would say to my court officers, okay, I'll walk in, all rise, Judge Erskine presiding. I'm like, please, do away with
Shorten
it.
it up.
Oh my God, yeah,
I'm not a king over here. I
well,
like that. I like that. You.
I mean, it was like, I'm like, really, but
I mean, in Massachusetts, there's that thing where people really do care about offices and titles, and they
yeah,
do. There's like I don't know, we're like the intelligentsia of the world, basically. And
I
so
never,
we're all into the status and this and that. And I'm just like you. I'm a punk rock guy. I don't like.
uh, I never,
It means more to me when I see the UPS guy. I'm like, those are the dudes I respect.
yeah.
They're out there busting their ass every
Right,
day.
right. I mean, I had a wonderful relationship with our secretaries and our assistants and our probation officers. And I was the first justice in that court. And I always said the same thing. Look, we're all together in this. We're a family. We all have the same, we all have the same goals here. So, I didn't, I wasn't, just loving that whole idea of, there's a hierarchy and,
Right.
that kind of thing, and you can, and it can really take you over if you want. I mean, it's like like you stand up, it's like, oh, I need a bathroom break, and then I think to myself, oh, as soon as I stand up, someone's going to say, all rise,
All right.
then I want to go out, take a break and come back in. Someone's going to say, all rise. And I'm like,
It's so funny.
it just
That would be
wasn't,
weird. I could see how that would be weird. All rise.
I'm sure a
Mike
lot
Crawford is standing up. If that happened to me, I'd be friggin' weirded out. I would be.
I'm
That'd
sure a
be.
lot of people love it. I used to say,
I know, but that's of the ones who love it. Those are the ones you got to worry about.
oh my
Um,
gosh. But
it's so
anyway,
funny.
that's just
We
on a lighter note.
I love it. I love that because the thing that like we just to tie this go back to Judge what's her name, McCarthy Naiman. One of the things that aggravated me so much, even beyond all the way she treated Tim Bradle, the way that she treated Kelsey, is the way that she treated that Jeff January. Because
Yep,
I'm like, this guy,
yep.
like probation officers to me,
Good guy.
I've gotten in trouble a couple times. Not, minor in possession and the cannabis. That was it. That was me. At age 19, I got in a lot of trouble that year. But I had a probation officer. I've had a couple experiences with them. My brother was friends with one. The one he got in trouble with. It's so funny. My brother was friends with the probation officer before he had him. Stuff like, but like those guys do and ladies sometimes, a lot of women too, actually, probation officers. They do like God's work to me, like because they're dealing with difficult people
Yep,
who they're trying to help get back
yep,
on their feet,
yep.
and like for her to treat somebody like that who's a worker, who's doing God's work,
Yeah. They're
that bothered
amazing.
me. I hate when people
They
treat
really
workers
are.
badly. It really, that's like my pet peeve. Like you
Yeah.
never treat a worker badly.
They're
Just not
they're just highly respected, those people. you chat with people. At the end of the day, they had cleaners in the building who would come into your office. If it was, they would ask, can I clean up? I always chatted with them, because, because everybody's, part of the group, and that's just, and as people can see, I'm chatty anyway. So it's like, oh, there's someone in here I could chat with,
Yeah.
So I had
I
this,
love house cleaners. We just had our house cleaners here. I
I
love
had
them. That's
this
why we did
thing.
a late show tonight because the cleaners were coming.
Good.
I
I
have
had
another
this.
comment and question. Why can't she see her baby right now? Brenna was asking. I think it's because of family court, right? I mean,
Well,
he's
yeah,
got
I
sole
think it's
custody, right?
because they did remove it, but I think at this point there's no reason she can't see her baby. But I think that impediment has been removed, and it wasn't in. They say in their motion that it wasn't there, that the judge didn't say that she couldn't visit. So basically, I think it's because the father has custody, and he at this point he's saying, I'm not going to do anything until the court intervenes. It's going to be a temporary custody hearing on April 6th, so it's coming up quickly. But I agree. I agree. I agree with you. She should be seeing that baby.
Did you say you knew when that hearing was? Because I'm wondering. I'm
I
gonna
thought
actually
I thought I read April 6th in their motion,
April 6th. Okay.
but I'll go and check it.
That's
But
one
it's,
thing. That's one less thing I have to text their defense team about because
yeah,
I want to be at that one. That one should be a good one.
I think so. Just check it, but it is coming up
Yeah,
in April.
April.
Yeah.
Now they're all making the all rise jokes. Victorine, she's one of our great moderators here. She says all rise, and this is the funniest one of all right here. All rise for Judge Carol Erskine and the one and only
Oh
Mike.
my God, that's
No,
just
sit
so.
down, people. Sit down.
That's
You don't
funny.
have to
Well,
stand up
that's really
unless
funny,
you need the
and
exercise.
it's just like I mean, there were lots of things that that would be. I used to say to my husband, the one thing I hope when I get on the bench is that I don't sneeze, because then like 500 people say, "Oh, God bless you, Judge. God bless you. God bless you."
That
You'd
would
have
be
like
hilarious.
40 people sitting in the courtroom, and it was all very lovely, but you know, um, I don't know. That's just what I just it was an honor, to kind of serve these families and children. That's the way I looked at it. It was just a pure honor, to try to work with these kids. And I met so many kids, and, it was such a great honor, but I never looked at it as, you know, something that was prestigious, that, required all the pageantry. The only time we had pageantry was on adoption day, because we wanted it to have pageantry. And, those were wonderful times. But yeah, but thanks everybody in the chat. You've
Yeah,
been,
now they're all this is what I love about my chat too is instead of I should have just asked them. They're all telling us it's actually April 2nd. That's the
oh,
date.
thank you everybody. They're so good. I knew it was
They
around
are
that
so
time.
good. They are like amazing. They're like my brain over there. They bail me out so many times. It's not even funny. But I really appreciate you being here tonight with us, I still call you the judge, Judge Carol Erskine, retired family court judge. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything else that you didn't get to talk about tonight that you want to broach before
Oh,
we wrap it
thanks.
up?
This forum was great for me because, you give me a chance to just sort of, say what I want to say. I like it so much better than things like court TV where they have three questions for you and you have 2 minutes, to answer the question. Uh, so, but thanks everybody. You've been wonderful. I really appreciate it. And, thanks for all the prayers for Harmony and Jameson. I'm going to let Blair and Jonathan know. I'm actually going to be talking to them very soon, so I'll sign off and get on my call with them.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, Judge Carol Erskine. It's always a pleasure, and well, I hope to have you back again and just keep doing the great work you do. We really appreciate and support you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for being here.
thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
That's Carol Erskine. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, she is awesome. I want to thank the chat too. You all, especially there's a lot of this. I see some men in the chat tonight, but it's mostly the ladies. You make everyone comfortable. I just want to thank you. I even saw that from some chatters tonight, noting how nice our chat is. You don't have to rise. You don't have to rise. The judge is gone. You definitely don't need to rise for me. Really appreciate everybody here. Um, I'm just looking at a couple more comments. There was something else I wanted to address, I thought, for a second. I can't remember right now. Is Biffle here? Biffle here tonight? I haven't seen Biffle. There's been no turbulence in the chat tonight. Um, yeah, hit the thumbs up on the way out. Make sure you subscribe. Get our numbers up. Our numbers have been moving up today. I want to thank you all. Our numbers are moving back up. I love it. Um, Trying to think what's coming up. Oh, Friday we have another attorney coming on the show. She's running for district attorney in Norfolk County. She's really good. Juna Perkins. She's been on the show before. She's coming back. It hasn't been in a while. The other, I call her the front runner. The other guy, Adam, who's also, I'd say they're the top two candidates. His campaign recently called her. What do they call her? Desperate. They recently called her desperate. So I think it's time to have her back on Friday night. Friday night, Juna Perkins going to be here. She's running to replace Michael Morrissey. She could be the next DA of Norfolk County. I think she is going to be the next DA. I know a lot of you, especially the Free Karen Reed people, like Adam. You think Adam Deich is going to be the next DA? I'm not so sure. You know, I always look at who's got the most donations from the district. She does. She also has the most, what do you call these, endorsements from the district. I don't think endorsements mean as much, especially the DA's race. Endorsements used to mean a lot, like 30 years ago. Endorsements kind of don't mean as much anymore. But donations from within the district, she's leading. That means that more people are supporting her with their money, more voters in the district than any other candidate right now. She's going to be on the show Friday night. I'm looking forward to it. Get your questions ready. If you have some questions, maybe the Turtle Riders have some questions for her. Yeah, we don't have many trolls here anymore. We got rid of all the trolls. Um, we only have nice people. That's what I like. No, they're not both coming on. I wish. Adam doesn't get back. He's too good for us. He's too good for anybody in the media. And that's the funny thing. People were like, "Oh, you're just mad he won't come on your show." And I'm like, "He won't go on anybody's show." That's why I'm kind of sour on the dude. Like I don't if he went on night side with Dan Ray, if he went on with Howie Carr, if he went on with what's her name? NBC Boston, Sue O'Connell, I'd be like, "Great." But he doesn't do any of it. Where Juna, she'll go on anybody's show. If you have a show and you want Juna Perkins on, all you got to do is send her a message. She'll come on your show. Adam Deich, he ain't going on your show. Even if you have 1 million followers, he's not going on your show. That's weird to me. That's why I'm like, I'm kind of dicey on him. I mean, the positive things he's got going for him. Karen Reed endorsed him. Karen Reed and her father, Bill Reed, and Alan Jackson, I believe, have given him campaign donations. So he's got that going for him. A lot of the Free Karen Reed people like him. They think he's going to expose the corruption. He's a former federal prosecutor. He's part of the Sandra Birchmore. But I just don't like the fact that he doesn't want to talk to the media. That to me is like, what are you afraid of? Like, to me, if they don't want to talk to the media, why they're running, what are they going to be like in office? Like, my big problem is a lot of times these candidates act a certain way when they're running and they're all willing to talk to the media, but as soon as they get in office, then they shut it down. That's always a concern for me. I've seen that happen a lot, actually. But this guy, even from the outside, while he's running, he's not talking to the media. That's weird to me. So Friday night, we got Juna Perkins. And I told people, I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm not from the district. I'm not going to be voting in the race. But I'm just being a straight shooter and telling you how I feel about their campaigns and what I see. Skeletons in the closet. I think it's more about what's going on with the feds. I think that, and again, I'm playing for Adam on this, but I think it might be because he's afraid of some of the questions he might get asked about Karen Reed, Sandra Birchmore, and why he left that federal office. And maybe there's things he's not supposed to talk about. I don't know. But to me, that could be easily remedied. You could just say, hey, I can't talk about this stuff. I could talk about this. This is what I want to do. That's what bothers me. You know, like Natalie said, Natalie's got it. If you're not open right away, then how will you be in office? I got questions. Exactly. That's why I'm like, I like Juna. I like Juna. She'll come on the shows. I mean, Juna even went on anti Karen Reed shows. Like Juna has no, she's not loyal to anybody. It's not like she's just saying I'm only free Karen Reed. I'm just gonna do the free Karen Reed shows. She went on an anti Karen Reed show after she was on my show like 5 times. Like I was like, that's a lady who's not afraid. Like I thought they were gonna give her the business. I thought they were gonna be like, why are you going on the Young Jerk show? She's not afraid. Like I thought they might say to her, why are you going on Howie Carr and Grace Curley? They're free Karen Reed. Why are you doing that? She's not afraid. That's what I like about it. Tentacles, yeah. I worry about the tentacles when you won't come on the shows. Like so that's happened on Friday night. Um, Also, we have a big show on Sunday night. We got my friend coming back on the show who's a journalist, Andrew, who got the Western Mass DA to finally release the files, a list of misconduct among police officers that this DA was hiding for 3 years. He had to sue them. He sued them. He's got a great newsletter website called The Mass Dump. He's going to be back on the show. He's a journalist. He's going to be on Sunday night. So we got some big shows coming up. I'm looking forward to it. Again, Friday and Sunday night. I think I'm missing some. Next Wednesday night, we got the state auditor back on the show, Diana DeZoglio. Like I said, we got the guest. We got the guest. I'm working on more too. Looking forward to what's coming up on the show. So get your questions ready. Yeah, that's what I don't like. Fiona says, "No way. He doesn't want an answer. He doesn't want to answer. He's running on perception. It's not good." I know, and like it's funny because he doesn't even have a job. He quit his job, and if you look at her, she's out every night, every weekend at events. All of a sudden, I just noticed he's finally doing events. Like he wasn't even doing an events. I'm like, this guy, all he's doing is sending out press releases. He's got a fancy website. He's got a nice video, but like go meet the people. Go talk to the people. She's been meeting and talking to the people for over a year now. So I think she's got I think she's got a leg up on this guy. I really do. And I didn't like the fact that his press team called her desperate. Like she's the front runner, dude. You're calling her desperate because she filed a complaint against your campaign for shady shit. That was the other thing. He did some kind of borderline shady shit. Not that big of a deal, but she filed an ethics complaint against him. And his campaign turned around and he called her desperate. I'm like, how is she desperate? She's got more donors from the district. She's got more endorsements from the district. How is she desperate? I don't think she's desperate, dude. Especially saying that to a woman. I didn't like that. I thought it was kind of lame. Yes, we try to have the best guest here. That's kind of what we're known. That's kind of what I'm known for. Letting those guests have a conversation. There was one person saying I was interrupting her too much tonight. I don't think I was. Does anyone in the chat think I interrupted Judge Carol Erskine a lot tonight? I don't think I did. There's always somebody in the chats, like always starting up. And you know what I did? I hit the button that says you're on timeout for 24 hours. Because I think they were just a shit stir. I gave him just a timeout. Yeah. I think some of these trolls now are trying to they're just trying to set me off. It's funny. It's like not gonna work anymore, trolls. I don't care who's in the chat. It doesn't. Yeah, you got roasted. You got the silent response. Timed out. Now they get the response. Now the judge is gone. I can say how I really feel about it. But all of you saying no. Okay, good. I mean, sometimes it does happen. Sometimes I do get too excited. Tonight I felt like I was pretty chill, actually. I've had a long week already. Ah, that maybe that's it too. Did he really quit? Was he fired? That's a good question. Yeah, Fiona. I don't know. I don't know. We need a jerks calendar. Who's going to be in it? I want all the ladies in the chat. That's the thing. If we do a jerks calendar, I'll be in like I'll be in my birthday month. And the rest of the chat will be our mods and the we got to have Biffle in there. But we got to have all our mods and then we got to have some of the best chat people from the chat in there. You don't have to be in your bathing suit, but yeah, that's the thing. There was a guy, Craig McClellan, running for Cohasset. He's a former prosecutor too, but again, he didn't campaign much. That's the thing. If you're not campaigning, are you really running? Like that's what I always look at. And I think hard work makes a difference. That's the other thing. I look at these as like job interviews. If you're not working hard, if you're not pounding the pavement, especially if you don't have a job right now, like I'm like, is he lazy? Like that's what I always look at because I think a lot in life is determined if you're a hard worker or not. There's obviously intelligence, there's obviously skill sets and all that other stuff, how you get along with people. But a big part of it is do you have the drive? Are you a worker? Do you show up? I think that is so undercounted so much in the world. And that's always the thing I look at. I think it's the number one indicator of success. That's why, like, when people say, like, why do you think LTL and JFK are so great? Because they work hard. I see the work ethic. That's the first thing I noticed about people. Do they work hard? That's what I've always gotten by on. I'm not like the slickest. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the flashiest, but I'll outwork you a lot of times. You know? I remember one of my bosses hired me at AIG. It's probably one of my biggest, that was my biggest financial job I got. And I remember like a year or two in, he said to me, he's like, dude, do you know like I was so close not to hiring you? He's like, and I asked my secretary. He said, because I wasn't sold on you. I didn't think you were slick enough. And I asked the secretary, I said, what do you think about him? She's like, hire him. I like him. I think he'll be a hard worker. And that's what he said. He's like, 2 years later, I had no idea that you'd be my number one hire. Like out of all the people we hired, you sold the most. I would have never predicted that. Hard work. And it's because, and the reason why he would have never predicted it is because I was not the slickest. I did not have the best resume. I didn't have the best anything. I didn't have the best suit. You know what I mean? But hard work pays off. That's the thing. That's the thing that you, and that's what I look at with politicians. Is this person a hard worker? And I see Juna Perkins is a hard worker. She works it. You're a hospital administrator. How do you like that work, Joe? I'm coughing a lot tonight. Yeah, that's true. People, you know why I was good too as a at AIG especially, especially AIG, where I was in this kind of nonprofit hospital higher ed world where we would go in and sell the group plans. And basically, what that meant is do the sales to the executives to get into the nonprofit to get the plan. We'd bid on them, and then you have to go sign up all the employees and meet with them. And so basically, for me as a financial advisor, I was working with custodians, so janitors, um, all the hospital workers. So like you think cafeteria workers, nurses, doctors, and administrators. So for me, it was a perfect job because I could get along with the people in the C suites, the executives, but I could also hang out with the boys, janitors. Like the janitors love me. Like the the kitchen staff, they give me extra sandwiches. Like they love me. Like I could sell to anybody. That was the key, and it was just because I was nice to them. I treated them like I wanted to be treated as a human. And I'd show up. Only in the beginning I did. Oh, there he is. Were you the one I timed out? I think you are. Baby fishes, I'm glad you came back. You're the one I timed out. You came back. You gave me a good comment. And the most important thing is you came back. You won an award tonight. You get the award because you got timed out. You came back and you weren't nasty about it. I like it. Baby fishes is all right. Now I'm supposed to wrap it up. I'm supposed to go, but I like my chat. I love you all. I love watching you. I love seeing what you're commenting on. Yeah, baby fishes. That's good. We like baby fishes now. The thing is, it was in the beginning of it was when I saw that comment. It was kind of the beginning of the interview, and I think you do have a point, but I just didn't want to get derailed. That's why I'm like, I don't know who this person is, but I think I've seen you before, and I think you've been fine actually. But I just didn't want to get derailed tonight. Juna Perkins will win. You think, huh, Darcy? I think so too. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. I think she's going to win. I think she is the front runner. I think Adam is actually kind of desperate. I do. I think that's why he's actually going out now and actually doing a little work. All right. I'm not sure about tomorrow. I guess I'm going to probably cover that trial in Salisbury. I'm interested in it because I know some of the people. One of the firefighters that called today to testify up in that Essex Superior Court from Salisbury. I know him, so it's like I'm seeing some of the locals. I want to see one of my good friends from high school is a police officer up there. A bunch of them were. Um, yeah, it's the this woman poisoned her boyfriend allegedly, and she's actually saying it could be the other woman. So, this is why it's interesting, because basically there was a lovers triangle, and the dude ends up dead of antifreeze. Somebody gave him some antifreeze, and he ended up dying from it. And it was kind of sad at the end of the day because his son was there today. His son friggin' testified, and I felt so bad for his son. They call him Little Leroy, and the son was like in tears. He was like telling how he had to pull the plug on his father, and it just. So I think I'm gonna be covering that one. That because it's close to home. Baby fishes, I could tell you're not a troll because you stick around and you made a good comment. I swear I'm not a troll. I think maybe I am tough on him. That's fine. No, I know. Now I know you're not a troll. I appreciate that. All rise for me. I'm gonna head out now. And if you know Afro Man, tell him he needs to come on the show. I don't know why I didn't hear back from Afro Man's people. They got back to me and then they didn't. So just checking right now. You haven't heard back. All right, people. I will see you soon. I'm not sure when. Probably tomorrow. We'll see. We have a little teapot on top of that little fireplace. Do you see it? It doesn't actually boil water there. I just thought it was cute. Someone was complaining I had the teapot at one point near the radio, and they're like, "What the hell?" One of the trolls are like, "What the hell is that?" I love how the trolls get caught up in the stupidest shit. It's like that's that's what you're mad about. You're mad about the teapot was on the radio. So then I moved it. I moved it to the fireplace for them. Sometimes I just laugh at the trolls. It's fun. I love the ones who are like, I used to really support you. You've lost me. Like it's like, oh, that's gonna do it. That's you're gonna keep me up all night. This person I don't have no idea who you are. I need a you know what? I think we're out of drumsticks right now. I buy them on like Saturday or Sunday, and then by Wednesday they're all gone. We go crazy on those drumsticks. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to play the little tiniest violin for them. It's funny because it's like I don't know you. I've never met you, and you think that your opinion of me is going to matter to me, who knows myself better than you do. It's just weird. I don't get why people get so like they think that it's weird. It is weird. Yeah, she is awesome. You know what I think I might do to close out the show? Since we were talking all about Kelsey tonight, and we didn't Mass Live. I think it was Charlie again, Charlie McKenna, who was mentioned earlier. He's always there at all these court hearings, and he got an interview. You know, as the whatever we call this, the press conference after the court hearing. I figure we should just play this real quick before we go. Hold on.
From the beginning, Kelsey Fitzsimmons has just wanted the truth to come out about what happened on that day in June. And she's wanted a fair trial. She has decided, and we've talked with her about it, that trying to get to that fair trial, an option with the judge, is the most efficient and best way to do that. And so, as you can see, the judge made a...
You know what's the funniest shit of all, too? Is some of these trolls are like, they were going after Carol when she announced that she was coming on my show on Twitter. They're like, why are you going on that show? Can't you go on somebody else's? And she's like, I'm going on the Defense Diaries next month. They're like, oh, we'll watch on that. And they're like, we can't wait to see what you'll say about Kelsey. And she's like, well, by the time I'm scheduled, by the time I'm on there, the trial will be over. And it's like, they don't really care about Kelsey because they're not going to watch unless it's on a certain show. Like, that says a lot. Like, I just laugh at some of these people. Like they're all about Kelsey until they find out that the guest is coming on this show to talk about Kelsey. Then they don't want to. So then they don't want to hear about it because somebody said something they didn't like about one of the heroes.
We have heard everybody has a
Weird.
right to a jury trial, but they also have a right to a judge trial. And we are prepared to start on Monday and move forward to make sure that the truth comes out. And we're confident that it will.
Why did you decide this was the better venue for the truth to come out? Like, why is the judge a better person to decide that than a jury?
So it's not a question of better or not. It's a question of knowing this case, the facts of this case, unusual facts, by the way, with 2 police officers involved. There is a certain amount of credibility that the fact finder has to make. And we thought it was important to make sure whatever we did with a jury or a judge, that we would be able to stick to the facts of what happened on that day. Kelsey has been transparent about what happened. She's spoken about it. There is sometimes in these cases a lot of excess noise around it. And it's important to her and to us, her counsel, to make sure, as we always do, that when we go to trial, we are going to have a fair finder of fact. And we just felt, all things being equal, really, that choosing a judge trial, what we call a bench trial, made the most sense in this case.
There you go. Based on what's going on with this, they made the decision. And they're probably right. Victorine says it's so immature to make those comments. Not only is it immature, it looks poorly on what they're actually trying to support. That's the funniest thing of all. It's like when they try to get me canceled on Howie Carr and shit. All it just makes them look stupid. It looks like it makes them, to the powers that be, they look like fools. That's the funniest shit of all. Like, everything that they do backfires. Yeah. And it makes their cause look bad. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you really think anyone that is a serious person is reading your comments and saying, yeah, I agree with that? No. No, they're saying, wow, these people are really twisted, huh?
Is it a very specific question that needs to be answered in this case? Is that maybe a judge could do that more efficiently than a juror who might start to get cloudy if they're bringing in text messages from that day? And can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, the judge's job in a jury trial is always to keep out extraneous information, to make sure that whatever comes in, whatever the decision is based on, is relevant and not too prejudicial. You heard some of that today, and the judge making those decisions. But because there is, in this case particularly, we think unusual circumstances, that keeping the focus, a laser focus on the facts, what does the evidence allow in? What's relevant? What's probative of what happened? And where we have 2 somewhat conflicting stories, shall I say, we felt that making sure that we could have a trier of fact who would focus on that.
Wow, this is going to be happening on Monday, which is shocking to me because I pushed my eye appointment back. I have another eye appointment, and it was supposed to be on Tuesday. And I'm like calling today. I'm like, can we reschedule this again? I have to reschedule it again because I can't miss streaming. I want to be streaming this trial. So it starts on Monday. I will be streaming it. Hopefully on Tuesday, I don't have to go to the eye doctor. I can stream it then too. But I'm looking forward to streaming this trial. Yeah, you know what the funny thing is too? I think a lot of these trolls too, they do eat crow because they are watching the show. The numbers are going back up. It's funny. It's like you could just like I told them. My guest list is always going to stand out. All I need to do is go back to my guest list and people are going to watch me again. No matter what you say.
And look, I have a great deal of respect for juries. Both Attorney Bradel and I have tried a number of jury cases, and they are interesting and they are important. And some cases are just better suited, we believe, for a judge to make a determination. As we've said, it is a simple case. We
think
want to
so.
keep it simple. We want to keep it to the facts. And we believe with this option, that's what will happen.
Do you think it's still going to be a 3-day trial?
It could be if we start Monday and we go full hours from 9 to 4. It is quicker with the judge, just because jurors sometimes are late and they need to take breaks, and that's not a criticism of them, they're people. But we think it can probably move a little more quickly. And so it's hard to know, but I would think maybe 3 days.
I think so.
You never know, but probably it'd be quicker than trying to impanel a jury. As the judge noted, impaneling the jury could take longer than actually trying the case. And so we'll be able to start Monday. We'll get right to it. The Commonwealth also does this, tries bench trials all the time, and so it's not that unusual that we're doing this.
And
How do you feel about this approach of the bench trial?
I'm going to stop it there. It's Kelsey's going to speak about this as well. I also think it's pretty funny that one of the biggest shit talkers about me lately too was like, "Oh, you're going to be streaming for your $5. You're going to stream for your $5," and then they're freaking using my stream on their show, which is hilarious. Thank God I was streaming for the $5, or you wouldn't have that content on your show, right? Was that last night or the night before? Fucking hilarious.
I made a good decision with it. I chose the judge to be the fact finder of the case, and I think that just makes the most sense in my case.
Do you think, did you make the decision during the motions process? He seems like he has been definitely accommodating, he seemed very impartial going through all the hearings. And when did you guys make the decision, if you're able to say?
So Bob, lawyers are always very jealous about their decision-making process, their, kind of how you make the sausage, so to speak. But, bench trials, in Martha's, in my experience, you know them when you see them. And this is a good occasion for a bench trial. We're excited about it. It's going to be economic. It's going to be efficient. Kelsey and Martha and I and Courtney as well, we always have an ongoing discussion. We always joke that we're talking about 4 things at once, and it's just an ongoing thing. And we felt that Judge Karp has been extremely fair. We have not been happy with the pretrial process up until landing in Lawrence, and now we're pleased and we feel heard. We feel like we have a good seat at the table, and we're going to go from there.
So on the docket, it lists a new judge for the jury trial. Is that just a mistake, or?
I think there's a lot of computer static that happens on those lists, and that's why I didn't want anybody to read too much into it.
Do you think that social media affects, or what effect does it have on, the choice of a bench trial versus a jury trial? Do you think it's more difficult for attorneys in that way now?
I'm sorry, I missed your question.
Just, how social media affects, your decisions in cases, whether you want to do a bench trial versus a jury trial. Does it have an effect?
I don't think so much in this case. It might in others. It certainly requires extra precautions by both counsel, by the judge, who's trying to get a jury that is not aware of or has reached a decision about a case is a little harder, obviously, with social media. In this case, it's not going to be an issue because it's jury waived, but that was not one of the deciding factors for us, frankly.
Was the public's general sense of skepticism for law enforcement playing a role at all? Kind of coming off of Reed with that investigation, finding a jury versus a judge. Did that weigh in at all with, obviously?
I don't think it did, and I watched that trial very closely.
One of the nice things too about this for me is I probably don't really need to go into court. Especially since it's probably going to be a little bit of a circus. It seems like there's a little bit of a circus atmosphere lately. And it's funny because I was like, I'm going to have to go in there because I want to see the jury. I want to see how the jury's reacting. There's no jury. What the hell do I need to go in there for? I can just stream the whole thing. I get to watch everything. The only reason to go into court is if I want to be on TV, which I don't. I don't care about being on TV like other people. The real reason I was probably going to go to these court hearings is I wanted to see I want to see the makeup of the jury. I want to see how the jury was reacting. No jury. because you can't see the jury on the stream. They don't show the jury on the stream. So for me, it's like this makes it a lot easier to cover. It's going to be a shorter trial. One of the benefits from, I think about myself too.
Obviously, as many of us did, different set of facts, different dynamics. Here it is much more simple. It is something that happened one day. There's 2 police officers involved. It's just a different dynamic. So I don't think that entered into our decision making at all.
And also, Bob, don't forget, we got a law enforcement lady right here.
That's what I was wondering.
So, I think there's just as much support for law enforcement as there is skepticism, and it's really more about the actual facts of this case. And, we've never shied away from that. We've been eager to get here. So we're glad we're here. I know Kelsey's glad we're here. And, she's been on the job. She was a CO. She's a patrol officer. She's served restraining orders. She knows this arena very well. So we're comfortable here, and we're pleased to go forward in this, right, Kels?
Yes, absolutely.
How you feel?
I wonder if she's going to be on the I just wonder what Nan Gallagher said last night. Is Kelsey going to testify? What do you think in the chat? Is Kelsey going to testify? Yeah, that's the thing. I think about that too. Like, I don't want to bring any drama. Like, I don't want to be tempted either. I don't want people yelling at me. If they yell at me, I don't know what I'd do. Especially if you get close to me, I'm a wrestler. It's like riding a bike, people. Like, you get too close. There was a nice guy who was just fucking around with me a little bit, and I can't help it. I'm a wrestler, I don't want to get any static. But it's funny because there's somebody that I referred to the defense. And what I'm interested in is seeing if they're going to testify. If the person that I referred to the defense is going to be a defense witness, it will be interesting. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to see if this person testifies. And I'm looking forward to hopefully having them on the show after this is over.
Monday. It's Monday. You've been waiting so long.
Again, I'm eager. I've said from the very beginning the truth will come out, and it will.
Thanks,
Speaking
Kels.
of eager, it seemed like you smiled when you told the judge you were, excited to maybe restart law school. Are you looking forward to getting back into it?
A lot of my life was put on pause very unexpectedly, so I'm looking forward to getting back into everything. Most importantly, being a parent and mom to my son. But going back to school is definitely in the cards.
Thank
you,
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.
It's funny. I see some comments in here who are saying you think the circus will work against her. That's what I'd be worried about if I were her. I don't think they're aware. I don't think they're aware of it. How easily it can turn against her. Some people have a lot of enemies. Let's just put it that way. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it turns out good for everybody. I want to thank the super chatters. Brenny. Thank you so much, Brenny Wood. Member for 4 months now. Thank you so much for the question and the membership. And thank you, Nina. I love Nina from Switzerland. I love her voice. I love her little accent. So cute. Crazy by night. Thank you. And Simon and Nunny of 7. Thank you. I love the new members. We've had a lot of new members lately. I also want to thank, what's that guy's name? Cosgrove, the fake Cosgrove on Twitter. He's a new member too. Wonder why he's a new member. Fucking guy. Jason Smith is his name. Thank you, Jason Smith. Glad you spent the $2 on me each month so you can get some content. I know, right? Not my problem, though. Not my problem. They're all smarter than all of us, so don't worry about it. What do they know? They don't know anything. I mean, what do we know? Sorry, I said it wrong. We don't know anything. I can't even get jokes right. I gotta go. Have a good night before they crucify me. Clip that. They're gonna start clipping shit again. Look what he said. He tried to make a joke. All rise. Let's all rise for me now. I'm a king. I want to be. Please all rise for me. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much to my mods, Victorine, Natalie, Diana. I saw Sarah here tonight. I saw a lot of mods, actually. I want to thank all our mods, the mod team. Who am I missing? Who else was here, Sarah? Help me out. I know I'm missing some. Victorine, I think I said that. I'm going through. I'm looking now before I leave. I don't want to miss any. Natalie, Diana. We got some good mods. I keep saying I'm going to go by. Yeah. Oh, Mia. Mia was here. Mia Bito. Yes, thank you, Mia. Thank you. Yeah, all rise for me now. Good night. All rise. What time Friday? I think it's at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. with Juna Perkins. Looking forward to that. It's been a busy day. It's been a very busy day. So I'll definitely see you Friday night, 6 p.m. Yeah, all rise. I'm a king now. I'm the king of YouTube. The king of journalism. I'm the king of interviews. I'm the new Barbara Walters. Don't I look like Barbara a little bit? All right, have a great night. We're getting too goofy. They're going to clip this. They're going to clip us. I'm getting clipped. Teacups up. Coffee cups up. You do have such a dirty brain. What are you thinking about, Sarah? You're going to get us in trouble. Sarah and Shock and Horror. I'm in shock and horror. What did I say now? What did I say that was dirty? Yeah, I'm taking it away. The king of spiel? The king of coffee? My buddy was the king of pot. We used to call him the king of pot. Michael Malta, the king of pot. All right, I'll see you later. Have a good night. Peace out. See you Friday night, 6 p.m. definitely. If not before then. No, it's not me, it's you, definitely. It is you, Sarah. You're a naughty person. No, I don't. Have a good night. I'll see you all. Thank you so much. Bye.